Hello, girls. Welcome to Knowing Who Jesus Is so we can learn who we're made to be, a study of Hebrews. We're on chapter 4 now. Our verse for this month was Hebrews 4:14. So then, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to what we believe. Like most kids, my boys didn't always want to take naps. Even though I knew they were desperately tired, they would fight sleep. Sometimes I would wrap my arms and legs around them in a big bear hug. They would wrestle and wriggle and cry until finally they would give up. They would grow quiet and their bodies would relax, their eyes would close, and they would finally rest. The author of Hebrews spent the first half of this chapter continuing the discussion that he began in chapter 3 regarding rest. He talked about the promised land rest and the Sabbath rest, and he alluded to eternal rest as well. In our study, we're learning about who Jesus is in order to figure out who we're made to be. In the first 3 chapters, we learned that Jesus is the Son of God. Therefore, we're made to have a relationship with God. We're made to follow Christ, and we're made to be God's dwelling place. In this chapter, we begin our study of Jesus as our high priest. A high priest is always part of a greater system of religion or faith, and belief is a fundamental component of faith. Therefore, because Jesus is our high priest, we know that we are made to believe. This is important because belief is essential to spiritual rest. While anyone can experience physical rest if they sit still long enough, spiritual rest can only be acquired through belief. How are these things related? Rest and belief. How are they interconnected? And why does this make a difference in our lives? How is this tied to our identity, who we are made to be? Let's put it into practice. Today I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm a middle-aged mother of 4 sons, one who unexpectedly died a few years ago. When my son Brandon died, I was faced with a lifetime of prayers that I felt were unanswered. I was angry at God for allowing him to die. I was faced with a lot of what-ifs and could-have-beens. I was saved when I was 5 years old. And while I'm in no way perfect, I had tried to live my life and raise my sons according to biblical principles. Yet when faced with this tragedy, my faith hit the wall. Was any of what I had believed true? Do I really believe that God is loving, kind, and good? Do I believe that He loves me and wants what's best for me, even though He allowed my son to die? In order to find mental, emotional, and spiritual rest, I had to come to terms not only with what I said I believed, but why I believed those things. I reminded myself that God is who He says He is. Period. End of question. The circumstances of my life do not dictate who God is. My emotions do not define who God is. What the world says does not decide who God is. God is who He says He is. My choice is whether to believe Him or not. The choice I have is whether or not to believe. I made that initial choice 46 years ago when I asked Jesus to forgive me of my sins and come into my heart. However, I also make the choice every day to believe, not only with my words, but with my life. To believe not only when God answers my prayers the way I want, but when God seems silent or when He says no. You see, I'm a lot like my boys. Without rest, my boys become irritable and unruly. They disobeyed, and their emotions ruled. That's exactly what happens to me, too. But how often do I still argue with God? How often do I think that I know what's best for me? When God does something that I don't like, I wrestle and I wriggle, and sometimes I even kick and scream. But it's in those moments that God proves most steady. He continues to be who He is, and He holds me even tighter. When I finally settle down, when I finally quit fighting, when I finally admit that God is who He says He is, and I believe that He definitely knows best, then I can relax. Then I find rest. It all boils down to what I believe. Kingdom ID number 4. I am made to believe.